I was driving out here and I passed by like a ranch or a farm or whatever, and there were some horses standing near the gate, and these horses were incredibly malnourished. You could see their ribs all along their sides, and they were just, the field that they were standing in was void of grass. I mean, there was grass here and there, but not much. And it got me thinking about what I want to talk about today. I really want to geek out about a character from Lord of the Rings, specifically Gollum. And the reason why I'm talking about Gollum is because recently over on my main YouTube channel, I made a video talking about the Lord of the Rings MMO that's coming out soon. And in that video, I go on this big rant talking about how Galadriel and Rings of Power is the very evil that she's trying to destroy. I talked about this again with my walk video with Crendor, where we were walking across Kalimdor. That's over on my main channel, Nixxiom. I was just talking a lot about evil recently. Evil and what is evil, according to J.R. Tolkien and stuff. And the one character in Lord of the Rings that really gives us a good glimpse as to what evil is and what it does to someone is Gollum. And so I want to talk about him today. I have here the Fellowship of the Ring, and I want to read a small passage from the Fellowship of the Ring to you guys, specifically Gandalf's account of what pretty much went down in Gollum's life. He had a friend called Deagol, this is Gollum, of similar sort, sharper-eyed, but not so quick and strong. On a time they took a boat and went down to the Gladden fields, where there were great beds of iris and flowing reeds. There Smeagol got out and went nosing about the banks, but Deagol sat in the boat and fished. Suddenly a great fish took his hook, and before he knew where he was dragged off and down into the water to the bottom. Then he let go of his line, for he thought he saw something shining in the riverbed, and holding his breath, he grabbed at it. Then he came up spluttering with weeds in his hair and a handful of mud, and he swam to the bank. And behold, when he washed the mud away, there in his hand lay a beautiful golden ring, and it shone and glittered in the sun, so that his heart was glad. But Smeagol had been watching him from behind a tree, and as Deagol gloated over the ring, Smeagol came softly up behind him. "Give us that, Deagol, my love," said Smeagol over his friend's shoulder. "Why?" said Deagol. "Because it's my birthday, my love, and I wants it," said Smeagol. "I don't care," said Deagol. "I have given you a present already, more than I could afford. I found this, and I'm going to keep it." Notice something already with Smeagol? Okay, we're going to talk about this in a moment, but just notice how Smeagol's acting. "I want this." "Oh, you are indeed, my love," said Smeagol. And he caught Deagol by the throat, and he strangled him, because the gold looked so bright and beautiful. Then he put the ring on his finger. No one ever found out what has become of Deagol. He was murdered far from home, and his body was cunningly hidden. But Smeagol returned home, and he found that none of his family could see him when he was wearing the ring. He was very pleased with his discovery, and he concealed it. And he used it to find out secrets, and he put his knowledge to crooked and malicious uses. He became sharp-eyed and keen-eared for all that was hurtful. The ring had given him power according to his stature. It is not to be wondered at that why he became very unpopular and was shunned when visible by his relations. They kicked him, and he bit their feet. He took to thieving and going about muttering to himself and gurgling in his throat. So they called him Gollum and cursed him and told him to go far away. And his grandmother, desiring peace, expelled him from the family and turned him out of her hole. I want to illustrate a few things with Gollum in this little section. A few things that really stand out, because already we're seeing what evil does. First of all, we have Gollum, or Smeagol at this point, and he beholds the ring in Deagol's hand. Very similar usage Tolkien uses to when Eve beholds the fruit from the Tree of Knowledge. It's very pleasing to the eye, it looks beautiful, and Smeagol, he wants it. You see envy in this moment, you see jealousy, and ultimately you see murder happening. It's sort of like a sped up version of, Eve taking from the fruit and then leading to Cain killing Abel. But we're not going to talk about that right now. That could be, for a whole other video by itself. So, what does Smeagol do? Well, he hides his friend's body. He hides the shame of what he's done. And then we see that Smeagol then takes the ring and he realizes that he's invisible while he's wearing it. And so what does he use it for? Well, he uses it to start gathering secrets about people. And he starts using the information that he's gathering about people while invisible, and he starts using it for malicious and crooked purposes. Maybe blackmail, maybe to try to have power over other people. And you know what? This probably worked for a time. And we know this probably worked because people started to get really pissed off at him because he had all this information about them that he was gathering. It's fascinating. Like, some people think that, oh, Smeagol got the ring and then the ring made him evil. But Smeagol before the ring was completely fine. Like, oh, he was this completely normal person, this happy-go-lucky hobbit creature, you know, and then he got the ring and he became this monster. No, the ring has barely had any effect on him at this point. He has barely been exposed to it, and already he's expressed envy, he's coveted another person's possession, he has already committed murder. He then goes and uses this ring to gather information to blackmail people. Gollum is already, like, Smeagol is already established as, even before the ring comes along, it's very likely that he already was probably a very malicious individual of questionable morals and questionable values. And the ring, what it did is it just saw that in him and just amplified it. The ring gives to him a sense of power, potentially, in the beginning, as evil does. He has secrets now. He has knowledge about his family and the people that they live with. And this probably makes him feel very powerful. And he probably was, a little bit, for a time. But you see that eventually people wise up, that even his grandmother, his own family, casts him out. This is what evil does, through very subtle little manipulations. It gets you to start thinking about yourself, your own ego, your own value, your own worth, and how to elevate that, blah, 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 and to the point that you're damaging the very people around you for your own gain. And what happens then? He gets cast out. And what does Gollum do after this? This is so like right in Thomas Aquinas, like right in Catholic philosophy. What does Gollum do after he's cast out from his people? He does something that is so curiously unique to evil and what evil does to a person. He then wanders the world for a little bit. He just kind of like wanders around for a second, and then he ends up at the Misty Mountains, and he descends into the darkness to be alone. Damn, like that is straight from Catholic philosophy, that what evil does is evil always seeks to isolate someone. And it begins with the subtle manipulations in the mind. You know, that idea of, you know, oh, I want something, but that person has it. You know, envy. You're thinking about yourself. You're isolating yourself from that person. There's me, and then there's him, right? Then it becomes, you know, there's me, and then there's my community. Like, my community doesn't matter. Look at Smeagol. Look how he uses the ring to torment his community, even his own family. My family doesn't matter. My community doesn't matter. All that matters is me and, like, the betterment of myself. So you see Smeagol do this. And then what happens? The ring just slowly, it sends you, evil sends you into more and more of an isolated mindset, separating you from the people around you. And then even to the point where Gollum is now hiding in the darkness of these caves in the Misty Mountains. He's away from the sun. He's away from the trees. It even separates you from the world itself. The goal of evil, the goal of the demonic, one of its biggest things that it's always trying to do is to get you alone. The devil wants you to be alone, mentally, spiritually, physically, whatever, because it's in solitude that evil can truly work on a person and corrupt them. Because ultimately, in solitude, the only voice that you have to listen to is your own. You start coming up with your own conclusions about things. You think you're right. You believe that your desires are sort of like the determiner of what is true and what is good in the world and what is bad. You have nobody to check yourself against. You have no brother. You have no friends. You have no church. You have no community. Nothing. All that exists is just you. And you become your very own God. And this is what happens to Smeagol. He starts off as probably just a flawed man, and he slowly descends deeper and deeper until he ends up in the caves of the Misty Mountains, alone with the ring, and it continues to corrupt him. But you know what's so funny about this? You know what's so cool? Is damn, like I love Tolkien's writing here. Everybody hates Gollum. They spit on him. They think he's horrible. You know, he eats raw fish out of the lake. You know, he feeds on, like, you know, the corpses of dead orcs and goblins and stuff. He's a monster. And people treat him like he's a curse, like a plague on the land. And the ring only further, the thing is, that only further isolates him. That only further drives him deeper into those metaphorical dark caverns. It only further increases the evil in Gollum's heart. And then something happens. Something so fascinating. And you know what that is? Frodo comes along. Frodo! And he looks at Gollum, and he shows him pity. He shows him pity. And for the first time, we see Gollum break a little bit. Frodo shows him mercy. Despite everything he's done, Frodo looks at him. You know, Frodo, you know, at this point, he's being isolated more and more in the story. If you think about it, you know, he's kind of becoming more and more introverted within himself. You know, oh, this is my burden, this is my responsibility. And he looks at Gollum and he's like, oh, this is the only person that can relate to what I'm going through. And we naturally seek connection. You know, we're humans, we seek connection with people. And so he connects with Gollum and he pities him and he shows him mercy. And he even sees himself in this like little crawling creature. Despite every warning, everything that people have said about him, that he's horrible, that he's wicked, that he's false, Frodo shows him pity, and Gollum snaps. For a time, Gollum, like the good in Gollum, comes out again, a little bit. We actually see a little glimpse of Smeagol again. Like he's still in there. And what ultimately made this little glimpse of Smeagol pop out of Gollum? It wasn't great power. It wasn't by beating him. It wasn't by like trying to intellectually argue with him and debate whether or not, you know, he was a good or bad person or if the ring was good for him or not. No, it was just by showing him a little bit of humble charity and just saying, hey, yeah, you've done all this terrible stuff, but I'm going to kind of look past that and I'm going to show you a little bit of mercy. And that's such a beautiful thing, because how many people out there just hate who they are? They look in the mirror and they're so ashamed of the way like that they look or the way that they see themselves, the things that they've done. And then suddenly, whether it's God or whether it's a friend or whatever, a family member, suddenly someone shows them mercy. Someone shows them genuine pity. Someone actually shows them a little bit of love. Genuine, unconditional love. And says, despite all of that, it's okay. I still care about you. I still believe in you. I still see that there's dignity in you. And just how that changes someone. And you see that change a little bit in Gollum in The Lord of the Rings. Despite all those years of isolation and everything that he's done, for a moment, we see Smeagol come back. And then, of course, ultimately, unfortunately, the evil in Smeagol is a little too much. And he ultimately reverts back to, you know, how he was in the beginning. And he dies. He dies clutching the very ring that he both loves because he thinks it gives him power and comfort and all these things and pleasure. And yet he also hates it because he knows that by clinging to all this stuff, it has ruined him as a person. How many people have that sort of relationship with a drug, with pornography, with whatever? They both love it and they hate it. Like, oh, the drug, it makes me feel good. But when the high ends, what are you left with? You know, maybe you're very promiscuous in your sexuality. You just sleep around, and it makes you feel good. But where is the genuine love between you and that other person? How many people can relate to that? Both loving and hating the vice that you carry around, like how Gollum carried around the One Ring. And how many people would be moved to something greater, to seeing kind of that good in their original selves before that vice? How many people would be moved to expressing that younger version of themselves if they were just shown a little bit of that unconditional love, that little glimpse of it that Frodo showed to Smeagol despite him being Gollum? I wonder.